Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers, and we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. I am so happy to introduce you to Joe Loveday. I just love that name. Sound like a character in a novel. Hey, Joe.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
I am great, and I'm so glad to have you as a guest. Joe and I met at a book event, and we just hit it off. Authors, we find each other. We find each other and talk to each other and try to help each other, which is so, so cool. So, Joe writes thriller novels. I'm just going to read this to you that dives into concealed secrets with themes of integrity, morality, and the mysterious stuff that goes on in our heads. I love that. A registered nurse, Jo brings compassion and medical know how to her writing, giving you an authentic peek into her mind. And her latest novel, she's going to tell you about two. She's going to tell you about the one that's out. I'm going to tell you about the one that's coming out. But the one I got to read and so enjoyed is Terminal Lucidity. I just loved it. It was such an exciting medical thriller, and it's pretty darn ripped from the headlines in a way, about contemporary things. So, anyway, I'm just so glad that Joe is with us. And maybe you could start, Joe, by telling our audience about your writing journey. How did you go from being a nurse to being a thriller writer?
Well, in my youth, I was interested in writing. And then as a young mother, I really didn't have time. I was working and taking care of the family. And when my children went away to college, I did have a little more time on my hands and decided that I would like to try my hand at writing a novel. I read probably a dozen books on writing and did my first draft, and it was awful. And then I was fortunate to get into a critique group with that met weekly, and a lot of the people in it were more advanced than I was. So I learned a lot while I was there, and that's where where we went from there.
Yeah, yeah, critique groups are wonderful, aren't they?
They
You know,
are.
having I'm so grateful always to my beta readers and my critique groups over the years. One group I've been writing with for 20 years,
Really.
but I was working, spinning my wheels on short stories that never got published. But it was still, I learned a lot. I learned a lot, a lot, a lot. So tell us about terminal lucidity. Tell the audience about the premise of the book, a little bit about it. Oh, and
Uh,
show
well,
us. And show
oh,
us.
oh, well, here it is. I can't see the
No, it's
myself
good.
in
I can
that.
see it.
So, as
Lift it
long
up
as
just a little bit more. Yeah, look at that. It's beautiful. Okay. So tell
and
us about it.
yeah. So the background here is a hospital corridor with a brain on the front because the book is about a recovery room nurse, Ariel Savin, and she's sent to the neurological ICU one day when somebody's called in sick because she has ICU experience. And she finds out that the esteemed neurosurgeon in the hospital who's been trying to save his brain dead wife is out of funds and grant money. And dark investors have stepped in and want to commodify the patients.
Mm.
So she uh, is trying to save the patients, and the investors are much more powerful than her. So she has a big fight on her hands there, and there's a hurricane that's coming. So she's got a very fine timeline in which she's got to get everything done.
Yeah, it was very exciting. It's a real page turner. Very, very cool. So, what is Ariel like? What kind of person is she? What do you like about her?
Well, I like her tenacity. I like her stick-to-itiveness and her sense of morality. She's very determined to help her patients, and even to the extent of risking her own life to do that. So she's a very good person, and she's a very competent, caring nurse as well.
She is. Is there any of you in there?
Well, probably a little bit of, that's one. I mean, you don't go into nursing unless you're a caring person for the most part. So I would say there's a little bit of me in there,
Yes, indeed.
as with all of our books, right?
Exactly. There's a little bit, and my husband says to me that he's in every one of my books in some little way. And I said, yes, you're always like the good guy. You're always the good, the good man. You don't always get the woman, but you're always the good guy. So, are there things that you're worried about in real life, in the medical profession? Are there things that are concerning you?
Well, I think that the use of AI implants in people's brains is of concern, and should be of concern to all of us. Um, One of the reasons I wrote the book is because I like science and I like following various things about science that are going on. And I was on Twitter one day scrolling through, and I followed this thing called Science Alert. And Science Alert put up a post about a company that's experimenting on brain dead patients, um, with um, AI implants and using embryonic stem cells to try and regenerate their brain stems. And then they said, and what could go wrong? Dot, dot, dot. And that got my mind going about all of the potential things that can happen with the patients. Because having worked in ICU, I know a lot about, how what patients' bodies can are like at that stage when, if that does happen to someone, and all the problems that can go along with it, and how do you rehabilitate someone's muscles in that situation. And then all of the ideas started turning in my head as to, what other implications could there be? Could there be infringement upon, things like people's personal information, um,
Mm. Yeah.
things, passwords, or getting into bank accounts or something like that, if if they are able to regenerate some things, or even third party manipulation of a person.
Mm.
And so my mind was turning with all of those potential things that could go wrong, and that's kind of what
Put them
got the
all in the
wheels
soup
turning
there for the
for a
book.
thriller. Yes.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that makes the book so compelling is that as you're reading it, you're thinking to yourself, this could happen.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem like so far out of the realm of possibility. So I think that really adds a lot to the quality of the book. And you have a new book coming out this year, right? Another
Yes.
one?
Campus of Shadows
Tell
is
us about it.
that's a psychological thriller, and it's about a student, uh, a guy who goes away. He's a freshman in college, and he gets involved with a charismatic but very reckless roommate who pulls him into a downward spiral, and his life becomes a descent into madness. And
Mm,
so he's got to pull himself out of that situation. And so that's uh, where we are with that one.
that
And
sounds
he's got
exciting. And when does it come out?
in September.
In September. That's so cool. That's excellent. Excellent. So I know you're a reader. You're a voracious reader like all of us are. With, you can't be a writer if you're not a reader. Are there
Mhm.
books in your life that had an impact on your writing? Was there an author or, um, a particular book that you think helped shape the kind of writer you are?
Well, I loved your book Reckonings. Um, and I thought that was very, very interesting. But as far as a particular author, um, I always, for years, I thought that Stephen King was a nut job. And I don't like scary movies. I don't like horror novels. And my husband was watching the movie The Green Mile one day, and I was doing other things, and I started watching, and it wasn't scary. I found it was very, very interesting, and I found that. So then I someone suggested one of Stephen King's novels, and I found his writing can sometimes even be literary and often along the psychological thriller line, which I like, versus then oftentimes they are scary, but not the so much the blood and guts horror
Yeah. He's
slasher
an
type
amazing
of
writer. He's an
things. Yeah.
amazing storyteller. Yeah. So many people learn from him, reading from him.
Mhm.
Yeah. Was there any other author that had a big impact on your writing that you can think of? Like, do you like
I
other medical thriller writers?
I do. Frida McFadden is, I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She's a physician and she writes thrillers. She writes medical thrillers and psychological thrillers. And one that I read recently is called Ward D. And it's a psychological thriller where the main character is a med student and has to spend a night on Ward D, which is the psych ward. And when you work on these, and we need to do this in nursing school too, where you go and you have to not necessarily do a night shift, but you have to do a rotation through psych. And when you're in the psych ward, the doors are locked. So you get locked in there. And it's something that I did not want to do at all. And that's so Frida McFadden writes about what happens in that particular story when they're locked in Ward D. And
Hmm.
she she writes other psychological thrillers too. Something that's on my to be read list is another one that she came out with called The Housemaid. And
Oh,
so
I
I
read that one. I thought I recognized the name. Yes, I read The Housemaid. It's yes, a psychological thriller. It is. Indeed, I
good.
listened to it on Audible. Yeah, that one's doing very well out there in the world right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that one's on my list.
cool. You'll have to let me know what you think. I would be
Okay.
very interested in hearing what you think. And I know that everyone who's watching would really like to be in touch with you. They'd like to find your website. They want to know when they want to pick up your current book, right? Terminal Lucidity, but they're going to
Mhm.
want the new one too. They're going to want to see the new one. You can hold it up again if you like, just so they
Okay,
remember.
yeah. So here's terminal lucidity.
Yeah.
And
So how can they find you?
well, this is where they can find me. I don't know if you can see that,
Oh
but
yeah, that's so clever. Yes.
yeah, so my website is joeloveday.com and Instagram is at joelovedayb and Facebook is Joe Loveday Books.
Such a smart
So,
idea. You're my first guest to do that. And I bet I have over 200 episodes. That was smart. I'm going to mention that to people. So I know now that you are going to follow Jo. You're going to buy her books. You're going to write reviews. You know how important they are. I hope that when you're in touch with her, you'll tell her you met her on what are you reading? What are you writing? Until next week, everybody, take care. Bye bye.
I thank you, Karen, and thank you for having me. I really
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. My pleasure.